Hey folks, so today we've been talking about the irritation tactics, and of course when I said I'm going to start the next video about it, I can't find the irritation book, and it's irritating, because it should be here. I was using it, it was just right here, and I can't find it. I've looked everywhere in the house and everything, so eventually I just printed up a copy, and got a copy, electronic here, so I figured this time I may as well, give you a few tactics to go on to, because I haven't really given you some plentiful tactics about, about that one there. Along the way, I keep thinking about the Keg restaurant and the stuff that happened there, and there's a lot of silly stories that happened. All sorts of little things happen in a restaurant, and the more you think about it, the more you remember them. So I ended up having a list that I made about all sorts of things that I remember on the fly, all of a sudden, oh yeah, there was that thing there. And if I don't write them down, I'm going to forget them. So I figured I'd write them down. So I got these two that are fighting that I want to talk about. So I'll start off with one of the irritation tactics. Now, I know I've told you that repetition is the key to irritation tactics. Doing something repeatedly or saying something repeatedly, no matter what it is going to become irritating. You just have to be good at it. You just have to keep sliding it in there, finding a new opportunity to express that word or that concept or that tune. In fact, in the prior video, we were talking about tunes that you could have that were irritating, and I could only think of one thing, but I thought about another one. It was a PAL tune. PAL stood for, there were three letters that stood for I think it was a construction company that sold lumber. And there were these commercials, and there was a French station, and they had this picture of a fir tree, like you could figure a Christmas tree, and the bottom of it, would start off with this tune, and the foot of the tree would be tapping along, and the tune was now this, and the tree would tap, and then it would come down, and it would start again, and another one would come down, and eventually the three trees would be down tapping their feet, But you can see this has all the hallmarks of an irritating tune, right? It's just, it's idiotic, it's simplistic, and if you repeat it enough, man, at some point somebody's going to want to kill you. So that's an example of an irritation tune that you could come up with, and there are untold number of those types of things out there. Anyways, I thought I'd give you a couple of these irritation tactics without getting too sidetracked. So the first one I wanted to talk to you about is the first one in the book, the first real irritation tactic, and this one is called suggestion. So what you've got and I have to say, I mentioned before that I'm cured, supposedly, of these irritation tactics, but the suggestion category still exists in my life. It will happen often. Unfortunately, my wife has learnt this technique and uses it against me often, because the whole key behind the suggestion is when somebody is fishing for a word. And it happens often, particularly more often as you get older. You're always fishing for words. What's it called? So you're waiting for this situation when somebody's talking to you, and this is your opportunity. Okay, so now you can jump in with your very own suggestions, and you've got to follow certain simple rules. Well, the first off is obvious. It cannot be related to whatever they're talking about. That's the basic, right? So, because if the person's having trouble fishing for a word, can't quite remember it, if you suggest some words that are far away from what they're trying to remember, they may well completely forget what they're talking about and be unable to continue the conversation. So that's the first part. You're hoping that may happen, if you can disrupt their thinking enough. So you give them something, and you when you're suggesting things, you should suggest by all rights a variety of things, not just one, several things, and they should not be related. So you shouldn't have, a spoon, a knife, and a fork. That'd be ridiculous. It's just not useful to get them going. But you could say a spoon, a melon, and an airplane. Okay, now those three things don't have anything related to each other. And the person by the end of this may well be fishing crazily for whatever they were talking about. Anyway, so this is, and those opportunities, that's the thing about irritation, is you have to be, you have to have trained yourself to be on the alert. You'd be listening for these situations that when they show up, you've got the irritation tactic just for that, and you can pull it up out of your roster, your well-practiced roster of techniques, depending on the occasion. So just listen for a suggestion. I'll bet you've probably done that type of thing. You've certainly suggested words before to some people, So if you're going to do it, why not get a bit of pleasure out of that and befuddle them, particularly if they're talking a little too long or something. So that's my first category of irritation tactic. Now let's go on to another one in here, the reach. Now the reach is a technique developed. Again, it's one of those things where you have to wait and listen for the situation. But inevitably, somebody will be saying, "Oh, I've got to get this thing." Or you look at the situation. And I've had an actual situation like that happen that I could point to, and I used it to full effectiveness. So the idea there is as stated before, irritation is you look helpful, you try to be helpful, but your goal really is to get in the way of whatever it is they're trying to do. It's always about making it take longer than they intended, slowing the whole processes down, or stopping it entirely. So the reach story that I remember that I did, the idea behind it is when somebody goes to grab something, you go, "No, I'll get it," and you run for it. You boom, 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 walk for it. But when you grab it, you grab the wrong thing, the thing next to it, and you lift it up. And you've got to make sure when you're doing this, you have to give a look of hopeful rightness, like, "Is this it? Did I get the right one?" And they'll say, "No, not that one, the other one." And you go, "Oh, sorry. And then make sure you grab something else, not the coffee cup, the coffee grinder, and they don't want the coffee thing at all, so you just keep grabbing the wrong thing. And that's an example of the reach. And a side thing of the reach is the fumble. And the fumble is where I have this story that happened in real life. And that one, I was a manager in a bookstore, secondhand bookstore. And being a manager when you're practicing irritation tactics is perfect because you've got a bunch of employees who just have to fall prey to your tactics. They don't have any choice. So in this one, I had planted the seed. I knew that they wanted to move the cash register from over there to over here. That was their goal. And I had just planted a suggestion. It was entirely false. Nothing was true about it. But I figured, what the hell? The situation's right there. May as well use it. And I had said, "Oh, if you're going to transfer the computer or the cash register, just make sure that you don't leave it unplugged for more than 10 seconds. Because if you do, the memory will blank and we'll lose all this data that we've accumulated this week." And then I walked away. And that was I just lied instinctively when that situation happened, and I started in my head, and I forgot about it really, until all of a sudden I could hear it. It's like 10, 9, 8, right? And they're counting, and so I realized, I turned around, and they're over there, and they're trying to move this cash register over the other place, and there's another person who's got the plug at the ready, and I say, "Oh, let me help!" And I just run along, boom, 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 arriving. And no matter what they're doing, I get my hands in there and grab that plug. And the fumble is you stop them from doing whatever it is that they're trying to do with the thing they're trying to do it with. In this case, it was a plug, and they want to just plug it in. And I just put my hands in there, and like an example of says, you say, "Move it to the left," and you move it to the right, but it could seem like it's an opposite, and you're doing the same thing as they are. Whatever excuse works, and you just prevent it. And eventually, they go 3, 2, 1, no, and they'd lost the memory, but they hadn't. It was just nonsense. It was just an irritation tactic, and it was quite useful to do it that day. I really enjoyed it. So that gives you an example of the fumble. But just jumping off into some stories at the Keg restaurant here that I've had. I have several of them. One of them is just an oddity. It's not really an irritation tactic or anything. Some of these stories are not irritation tactics anyways, but they all happen at the Keg restaurant, silly stuff. But this one is I got a case of spontaneous fire. I was walking by the storage room, and somebody had put a box of fluorescent tubes, 8-foot fluorescent tubes, and they had put it next to the hot water heater. And over the years that it had been sitting there, heat from the water heater had sort of gone into it, and it kept heating up the top. And when I walked by, it was on fire. It had just exploded on flames. It reached that point where it's dry enough, and suddenly it blew into flames. This is a silly thing that happened, is at some point, there was a fellow whose irritation tactic, because as I told you, I had lots of people working in the kitchen at different times, and they would either learn irritation tactics or they would stop, or they would leave. They would quit. One guy only lasted a day. He could not stay there. It's a toxic environment. So this guy, his attitude was, you're not going to get me. You try to irritate me, and I'm going to get back at you. And what he would do is, if I pulled a stunt or something like that, he would throw an egg at me. Now, they're in the restaurant, in the kitchen, you got lots of eggs. And he wouldn't get a cooked egg or nothing. No, this was a raw egg. And if you don't catch it, it's going to break on you, and it's going to make a hell of a mess. And you go, Matt, catch! And you turn around, and the egg was flying. You know, it was on its way. You had no chance to argue about it and say, hold on, wait, let me get ready. So this egg was coming, and it was just constantly, you had to be very sharp, very ready to make some sudden move to catch these eggs. Sometimes it didn't happen, but eventually, after a certain point, I heard another one of those calls, Matt. And I just turned around like this, and he was way over there, and the egg was sailing through the air like this towards me. And all I did was I put the knife down, and I reached down underneath like this, and I caught it in my hand. It just went whoop, like that, neat as you can be. And he looked at that, and he says, oh, I give up. He says, that's the best catch I've seen. No more. I'm not doing it anymore. And that was the end of the egg throwing incident. Another memory that I have, my boss. Now, I don't know if you've ever dealt with garbage in a kitchen, but the restaurant kitchen, there's these great big garbage cans, and it's right next to the dishwashing area. And the waiters come into the kitchen with the stuff they've cleaned off from the table, or the busboys, but they empty it all, whatever it is, your meal, liquids, whatever, it doesn't matter. They just empty it into these garbage bags. And when the garbage bag is full, and sloshing full is more of a description most of the time, because there can be a lot of liquid in there. So much liquid that you can't pull that bag out of the garbage can. It's going to rip, and it's going to make a huge mess. So it's just an incredible, really the worst of garbage bags that you can imagine. They buy big, rugged bags, but it doesn't matter, man. There's gallons and gallons of water in there. There's a mosquito right on my face. So during the week, they would have a company that would come in the morning, and in the back hallway, which is a fire escape hallway, they would pile up all the garbage cans that had filled up during the night. The train right on to it once again. I said, I'll do it at 3 in the afternoon. This time there won't be anybody bothering me. But, of course, there's the 3 o'clock trains. And this one's a long one, so it could bother us for quite a long while. But anyway, so during the week, they would have people coming in, a company that would come in and pick up these garbage cans. But on Sundays, this company did not come to pick up the garbage. And my boss suddenly comes in, and he says, hey, Matt, he says, I found a place. That's right, originally he had another restaurant, and he had us, every Sunday, we would bring them over to the other side of the restaurant, not bring them over, not in a car or anything. We had a dolly, and to save time, he wanted us to put two, one on top of the other. It would take two of us to lift a second garbage can on top of the first. And you had to balance that thing pretty good, going outside, and you'd have the curbs, tunk, and this thing, and like this, you know. So you'd go across the street, across a set of lights, and down a half a block, and you could go drop them off. But he had the same problem over there. They had garbage too at this other restaurant, and those garbage places, the great big bins that you have next to places with a top that you can open up, that the company can come and just pick up and get rid of. Those bins would also be full from there, and it was always causing trouble from them. So on one Sunday, he comes in and he says, "Hey, Matt," he says, I just found the perfect place where you can go dump this garbage. And he says, you just go on the back down the street here, you go down a block and you turn around and you'll see it, it's right there, the bin's right there. I said, okay. It was further. We had to go much further to do it. And so we start doing this. We do it for about 2 or 3 Sundays. And then on the 4th Sunday, we're there. We're actually there, and we're dumping the garbage in there. And this guy suddenly comes out from this door that was right there. And he's obviously been lying in wait, because this has been happening to him for 3 weeks, right? Somebody has been filling his garbage can. And this is the thing. My boss had told us to put it there, but he never talked to those people. He noticed that the thing wasn't locked, and he figured we could dump the garbage in there. But he figured wrong. It wasn't his garbage can. He has no right to it. And this guy was fuming mad at us because we're the ones dumping it in there. So, but that's okay. I put the blame completely on the boss and gave him the number. It was very helpful and everything, which was necessary because he wanted to call the cops and jail us. You know, he was livid. He was livid, angry. Another story that happened there is this is just a kitchen story. I'm sure you're not thrilled by kitchen stories, but this one was pretty funny or frustrating, whatever it was. At some point they had developed these shifts for the kitchen because they wanted to have somebody in the kitchen working and being able to prep meals when they ran out in the evening if it got busy. So you'd have one coming in at 9 and to 5, and the other one would come in at 12 and stay till 8. And the guy who was on the shift for the 8, he was a lazy guy and he did not want to do the shift. It was clear he wanted to go out and party or whatever, but he was just trying to get off it. He says to me, hey, if you work until 8 o'clock tonight, he says, I'll come in and work your Sunday. For me, that was a day off. I could get a day off out of it for just working 3 extra hours, and that was all right. I thought that was good. So I said, okay, sure, fine. And he takes off. And as soon as he's gone, somebody from the front comes in, and he was in a rush, he just shot out of there. He was just gone. And then somebody comes up from the front, from where they're cooking the appetizers and everything, and he says, "Man," he says, "we're out of escargots." And I said, "No problem, I'll get you some. I'll make you some up." And I go and get some of the escargots, which come in a can, by the way. Escargot snails, deshelled. Thank God you don't have to deshell them yourself. They come in a can, and you have these containers, and you had to get these little mushroom caps, and you take the mushroom caps and put them on the escargot, and then on top of that you put a dollop of something called escargot butter. And escargot butter was the most complex recipe in that kitchen. It required 30 items. It was quite a time-taking recipe to do. And so I go and grab the bucket, the 5-gallon bucket that we keep the escargot butter in, and I open it up, and it is empty, scraped clean. And all of a sudden, it hits me why this guy wanted to leave so early. He knew this escargot butter was there to do, and he didn't want to do it. So I go, logically, I go, okay, so no problem. I'll just go get some butter, and we can get this done. And I realized there is no butter in the fridge. There's no thawed butter. And then I realized the magnitude of the problem. I have to go to the freezer. I get the 50-pound block out. And I pretty well needed sort of like a 1/4-pound block. And I've already told you how you could melt it with the knife and crack it. You'd get a knife and you'd run it under hot water, and you could slice it in there into the block, and it would melt right in. And you could just pull it forward, and it would just crack the block at that spot. So you could, with a couple of cracks, you could end up some big pieces. But in this case, a big piece is not what I wanted. I didn't have time to melt anything. They needed this escargot, and I had to produce this escargot butter really fast, and it just wasn't going to happen with frozen butter. And I kept trying to improve the situation, And normally you put your soft butter into the big Hobart mixer, and it's a mixer that's industrial size. It's got a bowl that's about this big, about this tall, and a whip in there that's just a huge thing. One big cast iron thing or cast aluminum thing, and another one sort of a whisk, but again a big whisk. So what I decided to do was I started using the knife and breaking off smaller chunks, and I tossed them all in there, and I had I used the whisk, and I had the whisk turning around like that, and these chunks were just sort of rolling around. Just, you know, you're just standing there and you've got this time pressure. You've got to get this done, you know, and the chunks are just floating around. They're not catching onto anything. They're just rolling around. And I go, oh no, I know. I'm going to put in some melted butter, you know, and help it melt. So I go and get some melted butter and start dripping it in there. But it's just a soup, and it's just rolling like that. But the melted butter starts melting the butter all right, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. It starts making all of it melt together into sort of a shell, and the whole thing is sort of rolling on a skin of melted butter in the Hobart bowl. And it's just made this inner bowl inside made of butter, and the whole thing is just turning in there. It's not mixing. It's not doing anything. And you know, by this point, I'm starting to pull my hair out. What am I going to do? I got to stop this. And then it hits me. Flour. And of course, flour is not an ingredient of escargot butter. An admission right now. So I go and get some flour, and I drip it around, and sure enough, as soon as I drop that flour in there, it grabs that melted butter, grabs the shell, and the whole thing sticks to the Hobart bowl. And now the whisk is running around, but it's just not strong enough. I take the whisk out and put the big whip in there out of aluminum, and it just starts whipping that thing and mixing it up finally. But I didn't have time to finish the things. I remember I did not measure anything. I need capers. I need, you know, this and that. And I remember putting some relish in there, a lot of relish. A lot of relish. Just because a relish, it leaves all these little pieces of veggies in there. And it looks like there's a lot of things in there, but there wasn't. And that was my melted escargot butter adventure. But I got a free sundae out of it, so that's not too bad. Anyway, so let's turn the page on this irritation tactic thing and see what else there is here. The next one is actually the move, which I've talked about. That's the rest, this theater thing where you move your leg forward like this, and you push your knee out and you bug the person. You make it harder for the person to get by. But these days we don't go to the theaters very much anymore, certainly in pandemic times. And you know, but recently I was just thinking about this morning. You know, in pandemic times, there's occasions to irritate in there, you know, and a professional irritator would take advantage of those things. So that's a suggestion you might start thinking about, of what type of irritation tactics you could pull. I'm going to be thinking about that and see if I can make a little video of ideas I've come together about a variety of things that we could do during the pandemic that would be irritating. Because in the pandemic, you're stuck with someone, right? So, well, not necessarily. You might be alone but if you're not, if you're with a family member or a wife or husband or something, then this is a perfect opportunity to hone those irritation tactics to a sharpness that they deserve to be at. Unfortunately, that can get back at you. You can get in trouble in those things, but then that's your problem. You're the one who's doing this stuff. We'll get back to you on that one. The pandemic irritation tactics. I think it's a great idea, personally, because you've got it there. Why not use it? I may republish this little book and add a chapter for the pandemic, because it's probably going to be with us for a while. Okay, so the other one. The other one. And the next one here is the misunderstanding. And that one is just straight out deliberately misunderstand what they're telling you. And if it's an action, you do the wrong thing. If it's something they're saying to you, you react to the wrong thing. And you just look at the words that they're saying, and you just find some words that sound close to it, and then you claim that that's what they said. And the misunderstanding can be bolstered by another irritation tactic, which I know is in here, is that, well, again, since you're developing this appearance of being an idiot and irritating these people, another thing that you can do is develop this false hearing loss. Very useful, a false hearing loss to irritate people, because, if you can't quite hear what they're saying, you're constantly saying, "What? Can you repeat that? I didn't quite get that." Or just say, "Oh yeah," and you're oh yeah, did you hear me? Did you understand what I'm saying? Oh yeah, for sure. They walk away and they've got filled with doubt. This guy, he didn't get me. He didn't hear me. I know he did. He's not going to do it. Relax, he'll do it. No, I've had this happen with this guy. The misunderstanding. You just have to practice it, and like I say, coming up with weaknesses. You can do this on the phone too, by the way. You can claim the phone, something's wrong with it. And you can't quite hear. You can start scratching on the speaker with your finger, or tapping on and making other types of noises. Noises in the background are always useful, like if you're in a car. I did it on the motorcycle. My brother was driving the motorcycle. I was sitting behind him. And a motorcycle has this pleasant, usually, a pleasant type of engine sound. Boom, 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 boom. And all I would do is I was just close enough, and I would go like this in the background behind him. He would hear, that pleasant sounding, boom, 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 but that would be in the background, and it would be hidden mostly by the rumble of the engine. But you'd get this odd noise, and that would make him think something went wrong, and he would slow down, and listen to it, which I would stop, and whenever he'd go faster, at some point he figured it out. He said, "Shit, it's you." Anyway, sorry, I'm remembering several of them. I've got a couple in here, but I don't know if I want to talk about them. They're hard to talk about, but interrupting people is the main focus of that. You just, when they're talking and you let them get into the bit that they're talking about, hopefully they're passionate about it, and you just interrupt them. Essentially, by the way, don't forget, don't be shy. You can use several different irritation tactics all at the same time, right? This is the roster, but you can mix it up, and you can blend them together, So in this case, asking questions, if somebody's talking about something that they care about, and you may have brought them to this stage, you can certainly pop in there with a few side questions, and that's always interesting. You set them up with a few questions. They like hairdos or whatever, and what's this hairdo you've got today? And they start talking about this, and along the way you can start diverging their talk, right? What hairdresser did you go to, and where is it located, and what vehicle did you use to drive there? And you can just really go off, and they won't want to talk about those questions. They want to talk about their hairdo that they want to describe, and how they got it, and what it's called. And so you can see the idea. Again, it is always, you never forget those maxim rules. You're there to try to stop them from achieving whatever it is they're trying to do. You got to delay it, slow it down until it seems like molasses in January. I even developed a card game like that. It was called Molasses in January. I took the simple game like it was a war. Like you just my card's bigger than yours. Not the complicated game, but I set it up, and I made 2 piles for each person instead of 1. So you do this pile and then that pile. And then I had a couple of cards that whenever they would happen, you would automatically lose. And so the card would go to the other person. And I'm not sure how I created this situation, but it sort of created a situation where one player would lose some cards, and then the other player would lose some cards, and it would flip back and forth, and it would never end. The game would never end. So that's why it became called Molasses in January. I even made sure to write some instructions in there where I put a period at the wrong place, so you would deliberately misunderstand the instructions. I mean, how brilliant can you get, eh? Anyway, so the interrupt. Yeah, and the other one here is the answer. And the answer is a specific answer. And when somebody asks you a question, a question, anyways, you decide if it's appropriate for this reply. But you look at them and you say, in what way do you mean that? And the question is, well, it's just a few words. There's no way to mean anything, right? It's usually whatever they're telling you. Go to the garage and get the cement bag that's there. And you say, in what way do you mean that? And inevitably, it will create a response, which hopefully is going to be, what do you mean, what way? And when they say that, you're set up for your reply, which is, what do you mean? What do I mean? And by the end of that interchange, the person is guaranteed to be completely confused, most likely has lost track of what they were talking about, and if they haven't, they don't know where the hell they are. Anyway, so that's these two other irritation tactics that I had here. Let's turn the page and see what else we got. The refusal. The refusal. Such amazing tactics, eh? So the refusal is really quite simple. The first thing is, you have to be in a situation where the person that you're talking to is having an incensed discussion with you. They're involved, they're trying to make their point, and they're ardent about it. They're really pushing it. And at this point, if you can gauge the story, the whatever it is that they're talking about, it could be a conversation, but more likely an argument. And you sort of see that they're if they're giving you a litany, and there's this and there's that, they're sort of building up towards some type of point. And you got to make sure that you jump in before they make their point, right? Stop them from making that point. Don't let them get there. And then just go, nonsense. And that's it. That's it. That is the tactic, right? You devalue any type of, quantum physics argument about the reality of the universe, and you just refute it with this one word. Nonsense. Anyway, that's just ridiculous. It'll infuriate them, right? But you can take that know-it-all, yeah, keep going, pal. And just make this look of non-believer, and they will be pissed off to no end. You don't even need to retaliate with any type of argument. Yours doesn't have to make sense. It's nonsense. You're not... Anyway, you can see it's brilliant. So practice it with your friends and family and see what they think of it. Oh, jeez. The comparison. The repetition. Anyways, there's these, they're all written in these little headings. I think they're called paragraphs. Anyway, but these paragraphs are... So there's the repetition here and the comparison. So the comparison is, again, like you can create the situation, appear interested in the person you're talking to, ask them questions, be sharp, find their interest, listen to when they perk up when they're talking about this or that topic, and then just launch in there with a few good, well-placed questions about it, and get them going, get them talking. And then you can spring some of these irritation tactics on them because they're incensed, they're talking, they're involved. So the comparison is you just jump in there. And don't forget, if you're an irritator, you're talking louder than they are, right? That's the way to gain control. When you start gaining control of the conversation, you don't let go, right? So if they want to keep talking and they're totally blissfully ignorant of what you're doing, and they're just like, blah, 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 and blah, 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 and this is the blah, 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 and you're not even listening to this, and you're just, well, geez, that makes me think of something, I've got just the thing, like, that's sort of like really this other thing here, and you can launch into this other thing, but the other thing will have nothing to do with the original situation. The comparison is false. It's not a good comparison. It has nothing to do with what they're talking about. But if you can keep it going long enough, it will infuriate them to no end. And you can do that several different ways, to do this comparison. You can launch into other stories and come back to the same incidents that you were alluding to in your first comparison for whatever it is they say. And, a dual irritation tactic. Not only are you interrupting them and claiming to have something that has to do whatever it is they're talking about, you keep going back to the same damn incident It's stuck in your stupid head. Why don't you shut up? Oh, should have gone. I gotta stop. Okay, and the repetition. I mean, I can't say this enough. The repetition of anything, and there was an element of that, repeating a joke. Like if there are people, 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 people in the kitchen, you can arrive all eager in the morning. Hey, I got a great joke. And you go to one person and you tell them the joke. Bide your time, wait an hour, and then tell the other person the joke while this one is in the room and within earshot. And then you can go around and just pass to everybody, and you come back the next morning and, hey, I got a great joke, and you tell the same joke. Or you could vary the beginning. You pick a joke and you stick with it. You just vary the beginning so you get the feeling that this joke is not the same until it segues into the same original joke. Eventually, I progressed the joke, and I know later on there, the jokes is an entire section of things you can do with jokes, and these are stuff that I'm jumping ahead in the irritation tactic. But in the jokes, I had created a series of jokes that all had the same punchline. So it's a variation on an irritation tactic. Instead of repeating the same one, you repeat a different story, but it always ends with the same punchline. And in this particular case, it was because I'd seen a cartoon drawing, and it had Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and they were standing in front of a human-sized lemon with a door in it. Can you see it coming? Can you see what the joke punchline is? And so Sherlock Holmes says to Watson, "A lemon entry, my dear Watson." And there you go. That's it. So, but I discovered that you could find a variety of words that would make those same sounds. Element 3, lament 3, layman 3. There was just, a variety. There was even some that were sort of close. Alimentary, sedimentary, my dear Watson. Those were, I remember some of them. Eventually, I think there were about 3 or 4 people who would come in and had developed these storylines that would, Aylmer Sentry. That was quite a far-reaching one. Aylmer Sentry. And another one was Elementary, my dear Flotsam, a variation on the original one. Anyway, you can see we spent a lot of time coming up with this. There was 30 different endings to that story, and it would just irritate the hell out of them. Anyways, well, I think I babbled a fair bit here, so I think I'm going to cut it now, and there's still quite a few pages to go here in this, so I'll let you go for now, and thank you for stepping into my memories for a while and listening to me try to do these sessions and try to rid myself of these irritation once and for all by getting them out to you folks. We'll see you soon.